Hey everybody, Dom here. Today I'd like to talk about the use of fog in Left 4 Dead 2. Fog is such an interesting and powerful tool for game developers. It does a lot that may not be obvious. It plays a big role in optimization, gameplay, and aesthetics. Let me explain the benefits of fog. Fog plays a role in game optimization. There's something called the far Z clip plane. Most maps use it. The way it works is, a value is set by the developers. This value represents a distance from the player's camera. Anything beyond that value is forced not to be rendered by the game. This saves computing resources, as the computer doesn't need to render the entirety of large areas. This is where fog comes in. Fog is used to hide that there's nothing rendered beyond a certain point. The distance at which the fog becomes fully opaque, impossible to see through, is lower than the distance where the world stops rendering. Under normal circumstances, it would still be possible to see the edge of the world sometimes, but the developers were very clever. What they did was use large walls in the skybox. These walls have a gradient and become transparent near their top. They're always the same color as the fog, and they're always rendered, even if the world is not. If ever there is a situation where you would end up seeing the edge of what's rendered in the world, these giant walls are always behind everything, so you end up seeing them instead. Since they're the same color as the fog, it just looks like you're viewing fog. Fog hides details vanishing at a distance. In the source engine, the engine Left 4 Dead 2 runs on, there are things called props. Examples of props are things like bushes, fences, and cars. Basically, if it's not simple geometry like walls or floors or not a particle effect, it's safe to assume it's a prop. At a distance, props can fade out of existence. The benefit of them doing this is it saves computing resources. Props typically contain a lot of detail and thus a lot of polygons. They're taxing to render, so it wouldn't be very efficient for them to only stop rendering at the very far distance of the far Z clip plane. This is where fog comes in. It's harder to notice props fading out of existence if they're covered in fog. If there was no fog, the distance where props fade out would have to be increased, or it would be too obvious when they vanished. Imagine how distracting it would be to be playing Left 4 Dead 2 and see things in the world materialize and dematerialize in front of your eyes. Fog allows developers to take shortcuts and simplify geometry. Areas just outside the playspace can be made with less detail as fog obscures these areas. For example, on the 4th map of the Parish campaign, the street simply ends abruptly. From the playspace, it's not possible to get close enough to notice this. It simply appears like the road continues into the fog. On the first map of the Blood Harvest campaign, the world abruptly ends at the bottom of a gorge, but players can't see this happen because of the fog. On the second map of the Sacrifice campaign, the large abundance of cars on the road are incredibly low detailed, but players can only see them from afar and partially obscured in fog. Another example of how fog allows the developers to take shortcuts and simplify geometry is the way large cities are made. For the most part, cities are just simple geometric shapes in the skybox. On the first map of the Crash Course campaign, this is how the city outside the playspace looks with lighting and fog disabled. It's the same set of buildings repeated a few times. In normal gameplay, it's not possible to notice these buildings aren't textured. The second bridge near the end of the map is textured, however. Another example is the city view from the top of Mercy Hospital on the final map of the No Mercy campaign. Without fog, it's possible to see the city is very low detailed. Buildings are simple, and streets are represented by lines of streetlights painted onto the ground. Fog has other purposes than just for optimization. One function of fog is as a way to help players judge distance. Looking around, objects that are closer are only slightly changed in color due to the fog, while objects that are further away are more drastically changed in color due to the fog. Having fog as a distance reference is helpful in a first-person shooter, as players can better estimate if a target is within their weapon's effective range. Fog makes it possible to see in dark places. When an area is very dark or pitch black, the fog allows players to see the contours of the things in the space. The best way to demonstrate this is to disable fog. This area is now pretty difficult to navigate without a flashlight. Maps were designed with fog in mind. Look at the third map of Death Toll. Without fog, this forest area looks like it has lighting errors. The transition between darkness and light is very abrupt. In contrast to the previous point, fog is also used in specific situations to obscure the player's vision. Visibility is an important aspect of Left 4 Dead. It's part of the gameplay. For example, the Boomer and Smoker special infected can obscure vision with screen effects. Another example, the outdoor areas where it's raining on the passing campaign blur the screen. Fog is also used to lower visibility. On the 5th map of the Blood Harvest campaign, entering the cornfield increases the fog's intensity by lowering the distance where it becomes fully opaque. Another example is on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th map of the Hard Rain campaign. On these maps, occasionally the wind and rain will pick up and a horde of common infected will swarm the players. When this occurs, the fog again increases in intensity by lowering the distance where it becomes fully opaque. Fog reduces visual noise. Areas that are visually busy, like a forest, benefit from fog. A dense wooded area is made up of a lot of small details with high contrast. It naturally gains the attention of players because of this. Usually these types of areas are unimportant to the gameplay and so to not fight for a player's attention, are rarely highlighted with lights. By being covered in fog, their level of contrast is reduced. They become less visually noisy. Let's go back to the cornfield. Without fog, it would be too visually noisy. This is how it appears with fog disabled. It becomes harder to navigate and generally unpleasant on the eyes. Fog enhances the atmosphere, and fog can be used as a visual effect. These 2 points are intertwined. Fog plays a major role in how areas appear. In the Swamp Fever campaign, the fog is used to make the swamp appear humid. It creates the appearance of a very hot and wet place. In the Parish, fog makes the world look dusty. It generates the feeling of a barren, lifeless location. In Dead Air, fog helps add to the effect that the city is on fire. The orange glow gives off the feeling of danger and hostility. In Blood Harvest, the fog produces a sense of isolation and dread, etc., etc. The way an area is lit and the way the fog is programmed has a large effect on the feeling of a location. Look at the final map of the Passing campaign and the final map of the Sacrifice campaign. They occupy the same space, but appear very different due to having different lighting and fog. The Passing takes place in the rain at night. Its fog is a dark, washed-out warm beige. The feeling the location creates is one of action and camaraderie. The Left 4 Dead 2 survivors are teaming up with the Left 4 Dead 1 survivors to face a challenge. Now let's compare that to the Sacrifice. In the Sacrifice, it's daytime and the fog is a cold, muted blue. The feeling the location creates is one of dread and a cold stillness. The atmosphere is grim because it's there to foreshadow the sad and bleak ending to the campaign where one of the survivors sacrifices themselves. Spoilers! Fog has a psychological effect that synergizes well with the gameplay. Fog makes places feel more confined since it reduces visibility. Not being able to see very well far creates a feeling of tension. It's as if something can jump out of the fog at any time and attack the players. That's exactly the perfect feeling to have when playing Left 4 Dead 2. The players need to be on edge, observant, and aware of their surroundings at all times when playing Left 4 Dead 2. Things, indeed, can jump out of the fog at any moment and attack players. Without realizing it, fog prepares players for the kind of experience they'll be having in the game. Fog helps visually differentiate the campaigns. They all have their own color scheme and stand out from each other. Look at the similar wooded areas side by side. Each are from different campaigns. They all depict a similar place, yet they're all visually distinct. It would be pretty repetitive if every campaign shared a color scheme. They'd all look very similar to each other. Fog is an amazing thing. It's versatile, acting as an optimization tool, a gameplay tool, and an aesthetic tool. Left 4 Dead 2 is a great game to reference for examples of uses of fog, as it uses fog in a variety of ways. The next time you're playing a game with fog, take a moment to consider how the developers are using the fog. You might discover something surprising. And that's about it. Thanks for watching. For fun, let's edit the color and intensity of fog on a few locations, just to observe how different an area could look with different fog. Au revoir.